Let's do it. Amazing.
Now
Well,
every stupid thing that I'm gonna say is gonna be recorded. Amazing.
we can edit it out. No worries. Amazing. So just wanted to kick off, giving a little bit of purpose in the meeting. This is our third edition of Landa Talks. The purpose of it is basically bring in external and internal experts a bit further along their consulting journey to share a little bit about their experience, learnings. So excited to host Clara in this one. A good friend. Also, she was a neighbor in Mexico City. She just moved back to Paris. I know you're especially busy these days, so thanks a lot for taking the time. And just around structure, this is going to be, around like 25 to 30 minutes Q&A with Clara. And then we'll try to leave, questions for the audience in the last, let's call it like 10 minutes. If you have any questions, just drop in the channel. I think that's the easiest ways. We've tried Slido, we've tried many tools, but I feel that's always the easiest, right? Amazing. So let's get started. Clara, again, thanks for joining. Let's start maybe with a little bit of an intro. Tell us about your background. What are you up to these days? For the people who don't.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to try to be quick. So what have I done? I started my career working at oh my God, Mitch is here. Hello, baby. All right. So I started my career working at BCG, hated it. Then I moved to Vietnam. I worked 2 years for Rocket Internet. And then I moved to Mexico 6 years ago. And I was extremely lucky to meet Rappi's founders. It was very early. We're like 20 in the company. And everyone thought that they were going to die and it was going to be shit. And I think it went well. And so I spent 6 years there doing business development, opening 3 countries. Then I led growth during like almost 3 years when we raised $1 billion with SoftBank and just did a lot of crazy shit that you can't actually tell people. And I finally ended up like doing product for the last like 2 years, the last 2 years in Rappi. And then I left in June because my life was perfect and it just, I don't know. I just need more. And so I left to build my company. And so I'm back in Paris building in consumer social network. So here I am, and I'm very happy to be here. And thank you, Gabriel, for inviting me. And so what happened is when I left Rappi, I didn't really know what I was going to do. So I knew I was going to build a company, but I didn't know like what kind of company, whatever. And so I sat with Sebastian Mejia, Rappi's founder, and he said, okay, I have 2 advice to actually prepare for the future. And I was like, yeah, sure, be my guest. It was like, so you do 2 things. A, you become fucking like the most curious person ever. So you read, you write, you talk to people, whatever. And then he said, you help people. Like the only way to find meaning, like what you're going to do in your life and something meaningful is just helping people. So do advisory. And so that's actually when I started to do some advisory for mostly like friends of mine in Latam, but I have amazing friends like Tono, who build like no ports, Tono Poncho, who build no ports, Tono, who build like Rio Grande, like different people. And I do think like also what helped me is I'm writing stupid things in LinkedIn. And so I'm speaking up on some things. And so people actually think that I can do things. So they contacted me. And we just like started with conversation and it ended up in an advisory. So I'm not gonna deep dive right now, but that's pretty much like the story and how I started to actually help people. And then like since I started to build the company, I stopped doing any of advisory because I'm dying.
And maybe we can go specifically on like the first engagement and how it came about, because you've always been helping out people. I feel like that's the best way to do it. But
yeah,
how do you like formalize the first engagement?
Yeah. So I don't remember the first one was with Momento. Okay, I can't really remember like which was first, but like I think I'm just gonna talk about the main like the 4 of them. Like 4 of them that were like meaningful. The first one was with Momento, which is like a B2B mental health company. They contacted me actually on LinkedIn. And they were like, hey, we're looking for a head of product. And it was like, hey guys, I'm looking for a job. Thank you so much, but I'm really happy to help. So I do think like most of the time, the advisory starts with people asking you for something you're not looking for, and you turn to something you actually want. And so it just started with them, like with I did a first call, understood like what was the pain. And then we're like, okay, can we do a second call? So let me put that way. I just did it for free. Like I didn't care about like, for me, a good advisor, and I know like, honestly, Gabriel, like what you're doing is completely different because it's too professional, like advisory. I do think like at first you need to jump on a call with someone and just have a conversation, make them like see if this is something I actually know about. Like I'm zero bullshit. I'm never gonna tell someone, hey, yeah, I can help you with everything you want. That's not true. Like I know what I know and I know what I don't know. So I'm very transparent about that. And so my strategy is always like to help and be useful. And then people tell me like, can I give you 0.5% of my company so that I have more of your time? And for me, this is what actually is great advisory. And so I started with these guys and we did like 2-3 calls, and then they asked me like, can you invest in the company, be an advisor? So I did it through investing. And then like I helped them like 3-4 times, but then it was super short, right? So I just invested in the company for them. Then they worked with Noport, so different stage of the company, because Noport was really like billion-dollar company. And so I'm friend with Poncho, and he's like, my CTO has this kind of problem. Can you go and jump on a call with him? And so I did like 2 calls with him, and it was like more one time, 2 times, and so more like way more paid, but like not something that was going to be recurring, right? And then there was the third thing where like different format, and that's why I was telling like Gabriel, like advisory could be very different format depending on the stage of the company and what you like, what time you want to dedicate to them and whatever. So with Rio Grande was completely different. So I was friend with Tono, the founder, and it was like, we don't know how to do growth, and we need someone like almost full time. And I was like, yeah, no one knows how to do that. But anyways, and so it was like, I would love to have someone like full time. And honestly, this is the moment where I was very free. Like I just left Rappi and I had a lot of time. So what I said with like what I did with them was, okay, so we're gonna do a deal where I come like 3 days a week. So I was really hands-on. I was going to their office and I took the team. Really, like I took the team and I was like, I'm gonna assess what's going on. I'm gonna see what kind of team you need to hire. I did the growth plan and I really executed with the team. And in that case, what I did is I did a equity slash cash deal. I'm gonna be super transparent. I was like, usually I charge like $600 the hour. I'm very expensive. I don't know why, but like I was like $600 the hour. But of course, like very early stage, like early stage startup. So I was like, I'm gonna charge you 100 in cash and the rest in equity. And so with them, I did this during like almost 3 months, 3 days a week, really like heading growth for them. So I think like this one was the third one that is relevant. And I think these are the 3 formats that I really did. And they're completely different.
Oh, that's amazing. And maybe I know equity advising is something people are like very interested in, especially if they want to, build their investment portfolio, because it's a way to do it without needing of cash upfront, right? Very curious to hear about like, tactically how you go about these structures, how you frame them, how you frame the conversations. Is there anything like people should be wary of, etc.?
I think if you're very hands-on, so there's the 4th company. Let me talk about the 4th one. It's a startup, like it's like Mooney in, not a good example, but like Mooney in Europe, so social commerce. And for these guys, for instance, what we did is I really gave them my time at the very beginning. I met the founder at a party, like at the special party of founder, whatever. And he catch my attention, like kids, like smart kid. He was super into it, blah, blah, blah. And so at first I really spent like at least 3-4 hours with him, just talking about the business. And then he asked me to spend more time. And then I was like, okay, but sir, let's make it work. And so I actually made the offer. Like I told him like, okay, I'm going to take 0.5%, like it's an advisory, whatever. And I was like, it's 4 hours a week until we decide that it's not useful anymore. So in that case, honestly, it's 0.5%, and then it's just a discussion. I do think like usually like for advisory, it starts like 0.25%, and it really depends on the seniority. Like for instance, for my company right now, I have a girl, like she ended up just investing, but at first she was like, if you want advisory, it's going to be 0.25% of the company, and she sold her company to Twitter. So she's like more senior than I am, and she already had an exit and whatever. But usually it starts 0.25% and with 1 hour a week. And so what I offered them is like 0.5% and 4 hours a week, which was like quite a lot. Plus a salary was like, I don't know, like $2,000 in cash or something, like not that big, but like that they can actually afford. So honestly, there's no rules. It's like your valuation when you're raising capital and what always at seed stage. In that case, it was like, yeah, they had raised 5 mil. So it was like after they raised the money, Rio Grande was after the Series A. So it really depends. Usually, it's really hard for pre-seed company to pay for advisor. And honestly, I wouldn't recommend. I mean, now that I'm a founder and I've been like on the other side, you get very dispersed. Like when you start a company, you really feel like you don't know shit. And so you need a million advisor and people who tell you what to do. No one knows what they're doing, honestly. And so the best way to actually build a company and do it. So I would, if I had to do it again, like I would just take after seed companies. We really have a structure and teams. Otherwise it gets very like, it's too strategic for what they need. So I would say, yeah, seed stage or post Series A makes sense. And then in the case of no ports, it's more like one problem that they have and they want 1 hour, and these guys are like, they're willing to pay up to $1,500 the hour. Like it's I mean, when you have 300 million on the bank account, like it's different scale, right? So now it's a negotiation. I do think there is no rule, 0.25% of equity, but then you need to really give them your time.
Makes total sense. And then I think this is a good segue for one of the questions I had, which was, essentially if you were to go back to consulting again, what would you do like more of or less of, right? Like just based on your experience, like I know you talked about equity, but anything else you want to share on practical tips you would maybe like avoid doing or do a little bit more of if you were to start advisory again?
Well, I think like I really like the format of having one company that you're really dedicating a lot of time with them. I think it makes sense in terms of equity for you. It makes sense in terms of also like in terms of cash and also in terms of what you get out of it. Because I do think like, and I don't know the people in the call, and I know that if you've been an operator and you just do like one shot with someone, it gets very like, it's very superficial, and honestly it doesn't like you as a person, you don't really get any value out of it. And I find it frustrating. Like me, Clara, who actually I'm doing it to learn. Like I'm not doing it to make money out of it. I mean, of course it's a collateral beauty, but if you can also learn out of it, like this is for me like what actually makes sense. And so I would say the format of finding an early stage company, seed stage, where you can tell them like, I'm going to spend 3 hours with you, helping you. I do think it really makes sense. I think what I would do differently is when I did it, it was not clear like the way the shares are like were gonna be, right? And so it took me a long time after I left to figure out if I was gonna like if I was gonna have to buy the shares, if I had to pay tax on it. So it was honestly like kind of painful. So what I would do differently is I would have an agreement that I actually make people sign and not wait for anyone to actually send me their version of it. So I would say like I was very frustrating like everything that I usually do. I would have a lawyer actually do a contract for me, or maybe like Gabrielle, this is something that you can provide. I think like a very good template, and not just share, oh, okay, I'm gonna give you 0.5% equity, whatever, but honestly understand like the vesting, the time required, how like the tax perspective on it. I do think like this is something that actually was painful, and if you can take care of this, like would be amazing. So this is the thing that I would definitely do differently.
For sure. And one thing I would add is the period in which you can exercise the shares, especially if there are options, right? Like if it's very traditional for tech companies to give 90 days. That's very crazy. I would try to push that as much as possible. Amazing.
Yeah, I would say that it's.
I guess one more thing on. I know you're very hands-on, especially with your teams and all that. Like I'm curious to hear, in these formats, how you handle like the communication with your clients, right? Like once you were in the project, it's usually like a little bit more limited. It's only a couple hours per week. Were there any learnings with just like the practice, like practice and like how you handle kind of like that communication and also like the limitations up front, which are one of the most important things as an independent who only has a certain hours per week?
Yeah, no, I think like, so if you go on the format of you being super involved and super hands-on, I would say just do it the way you would do it with your team, and you put your boundaries. So for instance, like I asked to be part of the Slack of the company so that like I can see everything that happens and I can interact with the team directly. and you set up an automation like when it's outside of your time, you know, that you're not answering the Slack. And so I think the very issue that was happening to me is I'm very passionate, right? So if I'm like giving my time to someone and then like when I'm not supposed to answer, like someone's asking me, like, of course I'm gonna answer. So you end up doing twice as much, but I didn't give a shit because I like to, you know, I just like to do growth. So if you give me growth to do, like, I'm happy. But so I would say, as to be put in the Slack, I think like if it's in the same city, I would actually go there because it really gives you credibility with both the team and the funders, and it builds the trust. And in 1 hour, what you can do with someone like face to face versus like in a Slack or working remotely, I think it's like 5x more. So I would recommend that you actually go. So I would say yes, Slack, do it in person. Something that was really painful, and maybe this is what you're gonna experience, is like the very shit that you're gonna experience is the funder or the person you're gonna work with, like it can't really update you on everything that is happening. And so if you're really hands-on, you really waste your time trying to understand what has happened. So what I was doing with the funder is asking him to send me a memo of what's happened and what does he think like we should be focusing on this week. And I was doing like kind of the challenge, like of, you know what, you think this is what we should be focusing on, I do think this is what we should be focusing on, and align on the expectations. And also, you know, and being in Rappi, I've worked with some, at a moment in Rappi, SoftBank sent us a lot of consultant and I fucking hated it, but like that's how it worked. And the thing is, these guys, they're paid by hours. And the very issue is the CEO hired the person and then we're like, yeah, I think like growth is the priority, you should go and help the team. And then the guy just here and he's like, honestly, is useless because he's not proactive and he's paid by hour. And so I would say it's super important that if you're just entering a company, like helping as a consultant, you need to define who's going to be your counterpart. And it's not the person like usually who actually hired you. It's the guy you're going to work with the team. And so that's very important. And second thing is define what is expected from you and be proactive. I do think like what I've seen like between a bad consultant and a good consultant is the bad consultant is actually like waiting for people to show them what are their issues and then they just answer the questions. I do think like I was doing it a bit differently where I go deep, like I do deep dive, I do a session, and then I say, you know what, with what I've sent, I do think that this is what I should, like what I would propose to do. And then you sell the strategic project and then you sell the implementation. So I do think that the lack of proactivity of consultant is what was the biggest pain for me in Rappi, and that's why I did completely differently when I was the consultant.
No, amazing. I think that's a great practical tip. I guess just shifting gears a little bit.
And I would just add, I would just add, I already said it, but like, honestly, usually don't stay with the manager or don't stay at the strategic level. I do think that what is really interesting to understand is these guys, usually they're going to hire you because they don't understand what to do or who has to do it. So I do think the very added value of a consultant is actually to first do the due diligence with the manager and then say, you know what, I do think this is where there is value, and to deliver upon the value, I'm going to work with this guy in your team. So I do think like low ego is super important because you're a consultant and you want to work with the CEO and you want to work with that. We don't give a shit about this. You need to go where actually things need to be done and talk and work with the guy who's actually doing shit. So I would say like go a layer like lower in the org chart to actually make shit happen.
For sure. And also just keeping knowledge within the company when you leave, right? Which is most important as well. And just shifting gears a little bit, because I know like you talked about like being in many different projects, building teams, growth, product, whatever. Curious to hear your take on this whole dichotomy, or whether to go very niche on like your offering or like very generalists. So curious to hear your take on whether you think, as a consultant, you should go like very, very highly specialized, or I guess like more broadly based on your experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. I think both are very relevant. Like, imagine someone has a problem in growth and they're going to say, okay, we don't manage to crack search. I would hire a consultant who's really good in search. And we did it in Rappi. And I think it made total sense. I think my role is more of a, it's more generalist. And it makes sense for early stage company. Because, for instance, like in Rappi, we hired a guy really good in search when we already did like a $5 billion company. And I worked with this guy and really was like, super focused. In my case, when I worked with, I don't know, Rio Grande or like this company in Spain, early stage, they were just like, we don't know how to do growth. Like, we need to grow because we just raised like 5 mil and we need to raise the next like 15 mil in like a year. And so we need to grow. And the thing is, by being a generalist, is what I usually do is I explain them that growth is a compound between traffic and conversion and between marketing and product. So I always do a due diligence of, I look at the product, like I do a full product, and then I write a 1-pager of everything that is not working on the product level in terms of conversion. And I ask them like, can you send me the data in product? And so I do the plan depending on what I do. And then you do the marketing thing. And then you say, okay, show me your team. And so I send them a structure of the team and then I help them hire the team. So in my case, I do think like I've worked with people who like they were really early in terms of growth. And so they needed someone who knew about growth, about like growth marketing, about product, and hiring the team. It's identifying the needs and hiring the team, because usually they make the mistakes of thinking that I need growth, I need someone very good in Facebook and paid media. And I'm like, your product is not converting. You don't need traffic, you need conversion. But like I do think this is a shortcut that everyone is doing. So in my case, I think it makes sense to be a generalist. But if like some people like who are here are very specialist, it makes more sense to maybe go and target more late stage, not late stage, but like at least for Series A's company.
No, makes total sense. I would support it. And I guess like this is actually one of the last questions I had, but just thinking about whether, if you were to do this more like on a part-time, full-time basis, like how would you think, or any practical tips on how you would keep your pipeline full? I know you do a lot of like, LinkedIn messaging, and you do a lot of networking, you do mentoring, but just like any practical tips you want to share with the audience on just how to keep that pipeline full, which is obviously one of the most important things, is always be, searching. It's sales job essentially. But curious to hear your take on it.
Yeah, I think you need inbound and outbound, right? I would go, and so I had like two kinds of people who were sending me, companies, like directly the VC. Like VCs are really looking for people to help their like portfolio company, and I'm friend with like A16Z partner. So it was just like sending me all the company from Anderson or its like portfolio. And second is Endeavor. And Endeavor, they're really looking for people to actually help their company. They're asking you like to be at the boards of their company. So I would actually go and talk with VCs and Endeavor, because they need help. And at first I would do it for free and show the value. And then with them at a point you say, man, okay, I've helped like 5 of your company. If you really think this is helpful, give me an advisor contract, and I can be like part-time for Anderson Horowitz. So I think like I would do it that way. And the second thing is, people need to understand like what you're good at. And I'm writing on LinkedIn, so of course I'm not doing it for that, but I do think like my LinkedIn plus my experience in, so at first, like, let me put it that way, I get the attention because I'm writing stupid things on LinkedIn, and then people look at my experience when I say I worked 6 years in Rappi and at BCG and at Alibaba and blah blah blah, and I'm helping companies. And so this is when they're actually reaching. And so what I would say is, have a really great LinkedIn, and maybe something a bit different, like mine is a bit different. Specify that you're actually doing advisory, because if it's not written, like, people are not gonna guess. So don't put the subtitles on I'm doing advisory for startups. And if like you have a first startup, then you put the number, like the name, and then like it compounds. And 3, be a bit vocal about what you're good at. And so I would say, like, put yourself out there, build your personal brand, although I hate this wording, but actually you need to tell the world like what you've done and why they need you and how you could help. So I do think I would do more or less this, but you need to put yourself out there. Like everyone that I know who are advisors and they're doing a lot of like, they have a great pipeline and they're not like pushing for it, but it's coming to them. It's actually because they have strong statement and they say, I do think that growth is this. I do think that product is this. And so people are like, oh, okay, apparently he knows what you're talking and like what he or her is talking about, right? So I think this is important.
That's amazing. So just on summary for me is being very vocal on your experience, just making it very clear that you're open to advisory in your social profiles, and just talking to VCs, which are, you know, great way to like reach opportunities. On the VC point, just wanted to add one point, which is there's a specific role in VCs. You know, Michelle was actually leading this for Nazca, but like head of community, head of platform, which literally is in charge of like helping entrepreneurs. So like maybe that's one good target you can talk to. Wanted to leave it up to,
and the fourth thing I would say, so sorry. The fourth thing I would like, if you've never done advisory before, don't expect that people are gonna pay for you like on the first shot. So I would say find the companies that are hiring for some positions or whatever, and you can say, hey, I'm seeing that you're hiring for this. I can help you until you have the person, whatever. So I would say go and help the companies, reach out to them, and don't charge. I know it's counterintuitive. Don't charge.
Amazing. Cool. We have, you know, about 8 minutes left. Wanted to open it up to the audience. If you want to mute yourself, that's always a little bit better. If you can, if you just don't want to, just leave your questions in the chat. Any takers?
On the approach of reaching out to companies that have open recs, is it a viable path to do that just via a recruiter, or in your experience, does it only work if you like directly reach out to somebody in the C-suite of a startup?
C-suite, 100%. C-suite, 100%. Especially like if it's startups we're talking about, the guy who's gonna hire an advisor is the CEO or the CEO or the CPO or whatever, but C-suite 100%.
Gotcha.
And he's the person who actually has a problem. So the best way to convert someone is actually to say, hey, I've looked at your, like the best way to actually do it is look at their website, like approach them with actually a proposal. Hey, I'm very good at whatever, at growth. I'm seeing that just your CRM and your like in your website is broken in that way. I haven't received whatever in CRM. I can help you with that. I've done ABC. Do you want to chat? Come with something on the table, I would say.
I have another question, Clara.
Yes, I miss you.
I miss you and happy birthday. Everyone, we should sing happy birthday to Clara. Her birthday was a couple of days ago. But like now that you're a founder, do you still like manage to help out companies? How do you like take care of that time management? Because now you like are on the other
I get everything. No, I've got on everything. Like the very moment I really started to build a company, I'm not doing any advisory. Don't have time.
That's what I thought.
And I mean, it would be more convenient because I'm not paying myself. And honestly, I thought about it. Like, would it make sense to allocate maybe my Friday afternoon or my Friday to actually do this? But like when you're building a company, you have no time for this.
I identify myself with that.
And honestly, you don't want to. So that's the thing. Like when you're obsessed about something, it's really hard to actually go and help other people. Although, don't get me wrong. This week there is a company that I love that is called Immortal Game. They're doing like NFT chess. I love chess. I don't really give a shit about Web3, but anyways, and they just raised 20 mil, and the founder is my friend, and I'm just helping him. And I know that like in growth, and when you're founder, I actually find it quite nice to sometimes like 1 hour from time to time just go and see something else, but you can't do it like charging or with like doing the pipeline and all this, like doesn't work.
Yeah, I agree on that. Yeah.
I think on the maybe just there is no question, like just on the price. I think like my very, very big recommendation here is don't charge until it actually, like, people ask you to spend more time. Of course, like, don't spend like 10 hours and then you charge. But honestly, if you're at the beginning of the journey of advising, it's really like word of mouth and people being happy with you. So I would say just show them that they're gonna need you. That first thing. And the second thing is just you're worth something, like know your worth, right? If you're at the beginning, I don't know, start with 200, 300, whatever an hour, and then try to understand, like, also the I think there is no good pricing. What I love to do is ask the founder first, like, what are you willing to pay? And then you adjust before saying, like, I'm worth 500. I mean, if you're already like a superstar in advisory, like, just do it. And you say, like, this is my time, I'm super busy, it's 500 or nothing. But I think like more of the people that are in this call, like, for sure, more beginner in the journey. So I would say ask the people what they're willing to pay. And especially in projects where the company's still early stage, I do think it makes sense to maybe say, okay, before you're raising the seed rounds, I'm going to charge you 200 the hour. And then when you're raising money and you have 15 million in your bank account, we can go up to 400 and 500 and renegotiate, I would say. But at first, I wouldn't go and say, I'm worth $500. I mean, honestly, we don't know how much we're worth. Like, you're worth like the price that they're willing to pay, especially at the beginning.
Amazing. Any last takers? We have about 3 minutes left.
Did you ever get pushback on the price you named once you started pricing?
It's a negotiation. Usually they push back on the cash because startup, they don't have cash. So that's why, like, I've never, like, I don't always ask for a lot of cash and more equity, but then you really need to believe in the startup, right? So yeah, I think my advice here would be, if you really believe in the startup, go being on the equity side. If you don't really believe in the startup and it's way, like, it's like, be strong on the cash. But like, usually I help my friends and the company that are building, I really love them. So I believe in, like, the fact that they're gonna be successful. But we know how the market is, and the equity is fucking, like, it's honestly, it's a big bet and usually it doesn't work. So, but do something progressive. I would say, like, if you start low and you're really showing people that you're adding them value, they would be willing to pay.
Amazing. But I think you unmuted yourself. Any last questions?
Oh yeah, thanks first of all, Clara, for taking the time. I was just going to ask you if you were, you mentioned you have an advisor right now. What do you look for in advisors, or especially generalists, other than, okay, they worked at Rappi and solved this specific problem? Like, what would be some main things you would look for?
I mean, in my case, I mean, I have two. I mean, I have Sebastian Mejia, who is like Rappi's founder, but he's an informal advisor. And for him, what I'm looking for is someone who's already built company and who can help me on everything. Like, I just found a co-founder, how much equity I'm gonna give him. Like, I'm hiring the team. What do you think in terms of package for the team? Like, help for the fundraise. So in this case, it's a bit different. For the other person, it's someone who's actually very specialized, like in tech, in something that, like, in AI. And so I think in that case, it's the contrary that I said before, that at the very beginning of a startup, you actually need someone like more of a generalist. In my case, since I've done pretty much everything in Rappi, I didn't need this that much. I really needed someone like good at the thing that I didn't know to do. So I'm not gonna really help on this one.
Thanks for that. It makes a lot of sense.
Amazing. We can wrap it up with that one. Thanks a lot again, Clara. That was super insightful. And thanks everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys. I'm not sure I was really insightful, but like, thanks for your time.
Amazing. Abrazo. Bye bye.
Bye.